Well, you guys have certainly diced this one up since Saturday, so I don't want to get in the way of where we want to take this conversation from here. Uh, what do we deem as being? I can take this in a number of ways because I for one got my first look in a USC uniform at least uh, at Mason Cobb, and hearing Joel Klatt talk about how he jumped off the film to him. Of course, he had a stellar career at Oklahoma State as an all Big 12 performer. We saw him, he turned in a very astute and athletic play in particular on a key situation in which he was the only defender on that side of the field basically to stop a dump off pass that would have gained a zillion yards, and he timed Shedeur Sanders perfectly, jumped up, batted the ball back in his face, made some other tackles, led the team in tackles on the day. So I will start there in regards to standout performers, guys that we want to point out in regards to needing to see more out of them.
Go ahead, Tim.
Well, I brought him up a little bit earlier. A guy that, so that the guys that get in the stats are obviously the ones, they get into the box score, the ones that everyone gets all the pub, all the sacks, etc. But Dejon Benton and Bear Alexander continue that interior. What once used to be a weakness on this USC defense, it is now again one of the strengths. And not just getting to the quarterback, I said, on that key fourth down, but also having the ability to disrupt and cause havoc, because that's what you need to do, especially with a quarterback like Shedeur Sanders. A lot of people are freaking out about all the yards that were given up and all the points, but you're talking about the guys leading the country in passing right now and total yards. So this defensive line is improved defensive line. If they weren't there causing trouble, if you look back to the first half of this game, again, a tale of two halves. The way that they were playing, keeping everything in front of them, keeping the short play, getting the quick tackle. For some reason, the second half, this team broke down just fundamentally. As Riley said, a 7-yard hitch play goes for 20, 30, 65 yards. And that's when the wheels kind of came off this thing again, a theme that we're having problems with, just fundamental tackles and not making the plays when they're in front of you. But I mean, I felt a bit uncomfortable. I don't know about you guys. We could probably talk about this later. Probably save it. Actually, I will. I'll save the comment for later. That was made late in the game, after the game, by Bryson Shaw. But the front line still continues to be the strong point for me. I think the secondary had a poor game, and outside of Cobb, I didn't see anything spectacular. By the way, on that same play, they came back to it later in the game on that throwback, and it was very effective. So whatever transpired there, they kind of it was a great individual play, but they clearly didn't learn from that play because they came back to it later on for a touchdown. So, Matt, did you see someone that stuck out? I'm sorry, but I will say it reminds me of when USC's right on defense. So there's one key piece of USC's defense they have now is that interior defensive strength. When you have like the like Leonard Williams or Cedric Ellis, Sean Cody's of the world, Antoine Woods, even, these guys in the middle, there's were space eaters and could actually collapse that pocket, let the guys clean it from the outside. They have that now. And that's something that is hard to get on the West Coast. That was the key piece that, it just seemed like those Helton teams could never get. So, but when you have that piece, then you do have the ability to make change and get to the quarterback. Matt, did you see somebody in particular that really stuck out?
I think Dejon Benton, you mentioned him earlier, that's the name that really emerged against Colorado. You'd been seeing Solomon Byrd, you'd been seeing Bear Alexander, but this was Dejon Benton's chance to step forward. And I think Benton stepping forward also highlights the names that we haven't seen yet on the defensive line. Now, you'd clearly say that among the various position groups on the defensive line is carrying the weight right now. But that doesn't mean the defensive line has been great. I would say the defensive line has been good enough, but not great. And it's going to take great to handle Washington and Oregon in November. And so what that means is Anthony Lucas, Jack Sullivan. We need to see more guys stepping up on the defensive line. Like we need everybody. Like there are 1 or 2 guys per game that deliver the goods, but that's only 1 or 2. We need like 4 or 5. Need a much more complete effort from this USC defensive line. I mean, and not expecting this to become, Wild Bunch 3, following from the late 1960s and then Pete Carroll's group in 2003. Doesn't have to be Wild Bunch 3, but certainly it has to be everyone playing well in the same game. And that's what we still need to get. But like with a Dejon Benton stepping up, can we get a game with everyone stepping up? That's really the North Star for this USC defense.
My dad's gonna. By the way, Matt, my dad's gonna love you. Brought up the Wild Bunch 1. He's gonna. You just made some points with him right there. So
we need to get Papa Prangley on a show here one of these nights.
We'll see. He's a busy man. We'll see if we can schedule him in. Yeah.
Absolutely. That would be phenomenal. All right, folks, appreciate y'all being here. USC Trojans Live. Leave those comments and questions in the chat. And remember that you make this all go. So we appreciate any type of contributions here to the channel, to the show that you can all provide. Arizona is coming up on Saturday night. I did not check Game Time or network.
Late night ESPN.
Okay.
Looks like we've been slotted for a lot of late night games.
It's a real shame, by the way. Wazoo UCLA feature presentation, huge game, Pac-12 network. That's just, more of the same. And it's really unfortunate we don't get to see that game on a regular channel.
You kind of wonder with the demise of the Pac-12, how those business decisions are being made and with what incentive at this stage of the game versus if there was another contract and business was just humming along as it typically would, what those motivations are now versus what they should be or would be.
Absolutely. It's a great what if.
So really quickly,
right.
I wanted to just get your ideas.
Yeah.
I want to get your ideas, Matt. Well, no, because I want to hear you before I say anything. Because so I'm watching the post game, and I had my notes talk about during the call-in show on Sunday. But what was your take on Bryson Shaw, his heavy defense of a couple? I mean, I have a couple of thoughts on it, but he really made the point that he's putting everything on the players as far as letting their DC down for not making the plays. What was your day? I don't know if you saw it or not. Did you see the actual interview when he was talking after the game? Because he was, it was kind of hard to watch a young man sitting there and taking the brunt for a lot of this. When I feel, I'll just let the cat out of the bag. I feel that these guys, especially in the secondary, are really put out on an island, and a lot of these decisions they have to make just seems like when there's no like these cover zero situations or when the safety has to make a decision, he's coming up to the box, he's not in the box, he's supporting the pass, he's supporting the run. It just seems like they're having a lot of trouble with that. What's your take on it, Matt?
Well, like Clay Helton, players professed, to like Clay Helton, like he was a nice guy, like they enjoyed playing for him. But like there's a difference between, liking someone as a person and having your NFL draft stock improved by a coach. And like, you don't come to college just to play for a coach who happens to be a nice guy. You come to be challenged. You come to improve. You come to, pursue your NFL path. And so, I don't disapprove of Bryson Shaw trying to go to bat for his defensive coordinator. I mean, like you're trying to express faith in the guy who's coaching you, teaching you. But like Bryson Shaw certainly has to know deep down inside that his own performance is itself an argument against Alex Grinch. And how many times do you see players trying to say, well, it's us, it's not the coaching staff. But of course, like if the coaches were pushing you and if the coaches were getting the most out of you, you would be playing better. And One thing that also struck me, Tim, kind of, on a tangent, but somewhat related to Bryson Shaw defending Alex Grinch, Lincoln Riley saying, well, these aren't the same kinds of mistakes that we saw in 2022. Who cares? Like how does that matter? You're okay. So you're making this mistake instead of that mistake. So, it's better. It's not as bad. The same crap is happening, folks. And Lincoln Riley's not going to fire Alex Grinch in the middle of the season. Like, people who want that to happen, let's just be realistic. The time to do this was January. Jim Leonard was a free agent, should have pounced, should have gone for it, didn't. And, that ship has sailed. And we'll just see if Alex Grinch can get this defense to be good enough second half of the season. But to bring it back to Bryson Shaw, this is, I think, a particularly notable point about, where the USC defense is, and by extension, where the team is. With all due respect to the various teams that USC played through week 4, they weren't very good. And Colorado was the first team that, had significant talent on the perimeter, compared to Stanford, Nevada, Arizona State, San Jose State. And also, Colorado was the first team that also had a serious downfield passing game, with lots of weapons. Like Stanford, Nevada, and even Arizona State. Arizona State was more run-oriented than pass-oriented. So this was a very new approach. And so, as angry as USC fans are, and frankly should be, they should be PO'd at what they saw. I joined that. My report card was not generous at all to the USC defense. But with all of that having been said, if you're looking for a silver lining or perhaps a way to spin this positively, the jump in passing game talent from the first few opponents to Colorado was enormous. And so this was an education for USC. This was a revealer about just how inadequate the pass defense is. But they hadn't had a live action against a passing game remotely this good. So maybe this is an education for everyone, and we can see everyone step their game up. Not saying we should expect it, all right? But at least this was a jump in talent, because USC's schedule was so cream puffy through those first few games. And I did make the point repeatedly, we don't know how good this team is. Just because you throw Stanford around like a rag doll, that doesn't mean you've arrived. That doesn't mean you're better. It means that you did what you're supposed to do against a really bad team, but it doesn't mean that you're now a national championship contender. No, that comes forth against the really good teams. We're going to see that in 2 weeks against Notre Dame. But it does remain that the first few opponents did not test USC at all. And so the fact that Colorado tested USC this way, that there is something of value there. Now we need to see Alex Grinch, Lincoln Riley, and the staff take that value of really being undressed by a passing attack and translating it into teachable moments on the field. Again, I'm not saying this is all going to work out, because Alex Grinch doesn't deserve that level of trust right now. But I will say this was an eye-opener in terms of providing a real measuring stick for where this secondary stands against legitimately good skill position talent. It didn't match up very well, but maybe now this defense can really see, we're not there, and we need to be better.